Christmas, everyone. I know it's not actually Christmas, but I mean, it's a Christmas show, and it's a few days before Christmas, and the episode takes place on Christmas Eve, and it's really Christmassy. And look, I wanted to wear the Santa hat this year because I did for my Iron Man 3 review last year, and it was fun. I wanted to put the hat back on, and I'm kind of disappointed I wasn't doing it the entire show. But here we are. Also, is this what it's like when a girl flips her hair? Hold on. None of us would know because 100% of my audience is male. So I'll have to actually go find a girl out in the wild to ask. But let's review Hawkeye. Alright, so I was worried, much like I was with most of the other Marvel shows, that there were going to be way too many things going into this finale, and it seemed a bit too ambitious, and I definitely think this episode had that. I am very mixed on it. I think it started out well. It started out pretty promising. It had a few missteps early on, but for the most part, I was like, okay, this could be a very solid finale. But as it went on, it kind of started to falter, and when the episode ended, I sat up at like 2 in the morning and audibly said, well, that was disappointing. Let's just say that they should have released this 1 week sooner, so that way they could have ended the year with Spider-Man, which was absolutely incredible, instead of ending it with a disappointing finale for Hawkeye. This thing's really itchy, and oh god. I can't really get it to sit how I want it to. You know what, let's just... Now we're talking. Yeah, so it has so many plot lines to wrap up. In fact, you know what, let me pull up this text. I texted my friend the other day. I said that I texted him a list of every plot line that Hawkeye still has to wrap up. Alright. This is every plotline that the finale had to wrap up. Right? Clint's past is Ronin, Clint's PTSD, Kate being sucked into Clint's past and his story, and then the camaraderie between Clint and Kate and them becoming a team, Kate's mom being sus, Kate's stepdad being a huge mystery, Maya wanting revenge, Yelena's entire existence on this show, Kingpin being the guy behind the scenes, and the importance of that watch. And that didn't even include the fact they still need to get their suits to have a big fight by the end. That was the text that I sent to my friend. Yeah, it's hot. It's hot. It's hot in here. And so the episode does what I feared it would do. It either does not give a satisfying conclusion to some of those subplots, or it rapid fire solves them in a couple minutes. I think the first 5 minutes of this episode, basically, there's like a line of dialogue that they used to resolve like 3 of the subplots. It was just really sloppy, and I didn't like how they did it, and I think they probably should have paced it more as the show went along instead of stuffing all of it into the finale. That's kind of been a big issue with all the Marvel shows thus far, and an issue some of the movies have had where they keep setting stuff up and cram it all into the finale instead of pacing it out as it goes along. I kid you not, there are some scenes where a character walks into a room, says something to resolve a subplot, and then leaves. Not kidding when I say that. That happens a couple times. I honestly think that the best parts of this finale were the scenes before everything went down, like the calm before the storm, when it was kind of quiet and all the characters were, just kind of doing their thing, and it was, you could tell they were leading it up to something bigger, but it's the moment that someone fires a gun that it starts to go downhill. And I need to mention the action of this show because it's a Marvel series. It's going to have a fight for the finale. Loki's the exception, isn't it? But it's going to have a big fight for its finale. And the action in the show thus far has not been that great. And this episode is not an exception to that. I think the bow action is fun, but I use that term loosely because the fun part about it is seeing how all these different trick arrows are utilized. But the longer you look at the fight, you realize it's like so many of the fights are just a character standing in one spot. And this doesn't go for just the scenes when they're shooting a bow. This goes for a few of the action sequences. It's basically a character standing in one spot, tussling for a minute, getting back up, standing in a new spot, tussling for a bit, and then the fight ends. It's not that exciting. There are 2 fights that I think are good. One in particular that involved Kate in a office building, kind of fighting through the office building. I thought that was a really cool scene. And I like that fight, and I kind of wish all the action in the series was like that. I don't mean exactly like that fighting style, but I mean good is what I mean. And something that this episode I think did wrap up really well is this whole conflict that Yelena Belova was having and Clint Barton and all that. And I think having Yelena in the show was such a smart choice because Yelena is a character on her own, but she also serves so much importance to Clint's story. And so you can have them go in tandem off each other, and it worked wonders for that story. There was one scene near the end for Yelena that did so much for her character, and it was hands down the best scene of the episode. She's such a welcome addition to the show, and you know what? Really just a welcome addition to the MCU. I'm glad that they fought to get her in this show. I think the show was better for it. Another thing this episode wraps up really nicely is this whole partnership between Clint and Kate, and him going from kind of the reluctant mentor all the way to them fighting side by side. I think that was a nice little arc they had, although I will say that arc also wraps up in one very quick, easy to miss line, which was upsetting. Okay, I'm sorry. I should have started out by talking about Kingpin because he's the most exciting thing in this episode. Yeah, as I mentioned, I think this episode starts out fine and just starts to falter as it goes. They crammed way too much stuff into one episode, and it really kind of makes it sloppy to solve, and it makes the pacing of everything weird. After the episode finished, I sat up and said that was disappointing, and I'm not alone in that because once it ended, I opened Twitter and all the first reactions were coming in, and a lot of people were saying it was disappointing and it didn't do justice by some of its characters and the story was faltering, and I agree with pretty much everything people had said on Twitter about that. Do I think this episode brings the whole show down? Not really. I mean, you do have to wait to judge show until its finale, and I will look back at Hawkeye as being like, same thing as WandaVision, where I looked at WandaVision as 8 good episodes and then a very bad finale. It's the same thing with this. I think Hawkeye had 5 solid episodes, and I'm going to remember the finale as being a messy wrap-up to what I thought was a pretty interesting story. But will I enjoy the show less? No, I'm still going to rewatch it. I'm still going to enjoy it. It's just upsetting that for the... was it 5? It was 5 shows this year. Of the 5 shows this year, 4 of them have had really not amazing final episodes. I will have a full spoiler review of this series dropping here in a couple days, so subscribe, click on the bell to get notified for that. But now, let's talk about some spoilers, some things I want to mention. So if you have not seen the episode, go watch the episode, and then come back here. We're going to talk about some stuff, especially Kingpin. I liked how the episode just kicked it off with Kingpin. It's just him walking into this room to talk with Eleanor, and I kind of like that introduction, that build-up. It wasn't like this massive, high-intensity introduction. No, they did the tease. They made us all excited at the end of last episode. This episode, just cut to the chase. Just get straight to Kingpin. I know a lot of people are upset that the reveal was just kind of meh, but I actually liked it. I just liked just giving us Kingpin right out of the gate. And I love how he showed up to the final battle in a Hawaiian shirt. Like, is that his idea of being festive for the holidays? He had a red Hawaiian shirt and then his white jacket on, and he had a little hat. I like the hat. And I know the shirt's I know that the outfit's supposed to be a reference to a Spider-Man comic. So a lot of people, when he showed up in that outfit, thought Spider-Man was going to come in. I never once did. I don't know why I know a lot of people assumed Spidey would come in because his apartment is like right by the Rockefeller Center. And they were fighting at the Rockefeller Center. But hey, maybe it was Spider-Man's night off. Did you see everything he went through? My man needs a break. I think his fight with Kate was cool. I think it was a pretty creative fight of the way she kept throwing everything she had at him, and it just bounced off him. Like, she shot him with an arrow, he just knocked it away. He then grabbed every arrow in her quiver and just snapped them all in one go. She would go at him, he would just throw her across the room. I thought that was cool, and I do kind of like how she defeated him, although Daredevil must be insanely disappointed that it took him years. He was dealing with the Kingpin problem for years, and then Kate Bishop becomes a superhero and beats him 5 minutes later. But this fight, I thought it was like creative and unique, but it was also insanely disappointing. And I say that because we have 36 episodes of Daredevil. Kingpin is in a good amount of those episodes. And the fights with Kingpin are always some of the coolest moments on the show. The final fight between Daredevil, Kingpin, Bullseye is great. The scene at the end of season 1 where Daredevil and Kingpin fight is awesome. Kingpin, when he is in on the action, he is terrifying and he's badass. And I didn't feel any of that in this. Now, I'm not saying the fights needed to be Daredevil quality, but this was such a different Kingpin. Like, see, these are moments where people are like, oh, how come you say Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Netflix shows aren't canon? Well, I'm about to have some irrefutable evidence in a minute, but it's for reasons like this. Kingpin feels like such a different character in this show that I refuse to believe that this Kingpin is the same one who cracked Bullseye's back on a brick wall and then threw everything he had at Daredevil and then accepted getting killed. This Kingpin begged for his life in front of Echo, right? This Kingpin is definitely not the same Kingpin that we saw in Daredevil. And it's for that reason I'm like, there is no way these are the same character. And it goes just beyond his fights. I never once feared Kingpin. In my Spider-Man review, I said that Green Goblin, don't worry, that this relates, I said that Green Goblin is a character that whenever he enters a scene, I fear for everyone in the scene. That's how I feel with Daredevil Kingpin. That is not how I feel with MCU Kingpin. When he's in a scene, I'm like, oh hey, that's cool, it's Kingpin, but I was never worried, right? He broke the car door off of Eleanor's car. I never thought Eleanor was in any danger, right? I never thought Kate Bishop was in any danger. Hawkeye was talking about how dangerous Kingpin is, but never once did I feel the danger of Kingpin. They introduce him, he fights Kate, then he gets shot in the head by Maya. Is he actually dead? 100% he's not actually dead. There's no way they would do that, and there is a comic where he gets shot in the eyes and he goes blind. So they probably could be going that route. But I do still think it was kind of just one big joke that they're like, let's hype up Kingpin, just have him get shot by an arrow, blown up, or hit by a car, blown up, then waddle away and then beg for his life before he's shot in the face, and that's the last we see of Kingpin. I'm sorry. That's not my hashtag, not my Kingpin. But yeah, there's no way he's dead. They just brought Daredevil in. Right? Spidey just went back to basics, and Kingpin is like, he was like controlling a part of New York. It's all set up too perfectly that there's no way Kingpin's actually gone. Marvel definitely is not going to let that happen until he gets a tussle with some of these heroes, but it's still disappointing the way this wrapped up with just him getting his ass beat from start to finish. And Clint never even got to look at him. Clint's been hyping up the danger of Kingpin this entire show, and there was never a moment between Clint and Kingpin. Come on, missed opportunity. And I said the Yelena plotline wrap-up was really solid, and that was the fight between her and Clint when she's about to kill him and he does the whistle that Natasha did. And they share this moment, and he talks about how no one was able to stop her, and she talked about Yelena all the time, and that Nat loved her, and there's tears, and Florence Pugh's a good actress, and Jeremy Renner's a good actor, and then Yelena just moves on from it and leaves. And the reason I thought that was solid is because it both does justice to Yelena's arc and Clint's story, because Clint has this whole story about Nat's death and trying to move on from that, and the fact that he can't cope with it, and then Natasha's sister comes in, and then him talking Yelena down from killing him is kind of what brings, not to terms with it, but it's what helps him cope with Natasha's death. I thought that was incredible, and that's why I say that Yelena, I'm so glad they fought to put her in this show, because it elevated that story a lot, and I honestly couldn't imagine this show not having Yelena in there. And her fight in that office building, or was it the apartment building? Was it an apartment? I think it was. When they get out of the elevator and they're fighting through the hallway there. I thought that was pretty cool. That was the fight that I said I really liked. But you know what I thought went on way longer than it should have is that stupid scene in the apartment where Kate was just trying to hit all the buttons and Yelena wouldn't let her. Like, just cut that. Just cut that and just go resolve something else in a better way. We don't have time for jokes when there's 8 billion plot lines to solve in one episode. Now, I mentioned how a bunch of plot lines are wrapped up right away, and that's, you know, we get that phone call at we get the like talk between Eleanor and Kingpin at the start, and then Kate's listening to it on a phone, and then it just wraps up so many different subplots right in one line of dialogue. And it's funny because it wraps up two things all of us knew immediately, which is Jack is innocent and Eleanor's the bad guy. And it's just like expositing, being like, we gotta wrap up this whole Eleanor Bishop storyline now that we've introduced a bigger bad. So let's just have Kate just mention it after she listens to this recording. That was pretty sloppy. Then there's things like the watch payoff, which the watch was never once mentioned in this episode. It was such an important part of the series. It wasn't mentioned in this episode until the very end. At the Barton farm on Christmas Day, when he just casually mentions he found the watch in a black market auction in New York, gives it to her. She flips it around, and it's the S.H.I.E.L.D. logo with the number 19, which, by the way, is the number of Mockingbird. She is S.H.I.E.L.D. Agent 19. So, guys, if it wasn't clear before, it's pretty clear that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't canon, because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has Mockingbird that is not the same character in any way to the Mockingbird in this show. So, it is what it is. It's time to come to terms with that fact. This episode overall feels like characters hurry up and go to the place the plot needs them to, and then just move on to the next thing immediately. Maya asks for a day off, right? Her next scene is her in her apartment looking at a photo of her dad, and her next scene is her beating the shit out of Kazi. Like, there's no in-between, it just goes from one thing to the next, because it did not have enough time. So, when Maya betrayed Kazi, my reaction wasn't like, yes, Maya! My reaction was like, hey, Maya. Oh yeah, swordsman! I completely forgot about swordsman! He actually gets to use his sword for about 4 seconds before his fight moves off screen. I did end up really liking the epilogue of the show when Clint gets home on Christmas, something we all knew was going to happen, and he has Kate and Lucky with him, says he adopted a few strays, and they're just part of the Barton family now, and I thought that was a nice little wrap-up, and I did like the way that Kate starts rattling off names, and Hawkeye says he has an idea, and that pulls up the title card. I thought that was pretty cool. I like that, but overall, the episode was just really sloppy, and it was disappointing, and I think they didn't pace the show out as well as they could have. That was just the main problem. Just the pacing of the story and the plot lines overall is what really ended up hurting this. They crammed too much into one episode when they didn't need to do that. I just want one of these shows to have a great finale. WandaVision's really, really disappointing. I'll never get over that. Falcon and the Winter Soldiers was like, it was fine, but I do agree with the people that the pacing on it was just not okay. Loki had a good finale. What If did not have a good finale, and Hawkeye does not have a good finale. So 4 of the 5 shows have fumbled their finale, and that's disappointing. And I think Moon Knight is next. And I hope Moon Knight doesn't do the same thing, but we'll see. Well, you guys, thanks for watching these Hawkeye reviews with me. I will have the full series review as well as an episode ranking up in a few days, so definitely stay tuned for that. But what were your thoughts on the Hawkeye finale? Let me know all of that down in the comments below. Also, leave a like on this video, subscribe, click on the bell icon to receive all notifications from the MCU HQ. That's going to be it. Have a great day, guys.